What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. As you can see, we have another episode of Heavy Talk. This one is so powerful. I just finished the interview with PJ, and I really think that this is going to be a very powerful interview for a lot of the people watching. You guys will find out more about it, but PJ ended up developing type 2 diabetes through his obesity, and he's also been able to beat that. And we talk a lot about how he developed it, how he was able to beat it, what was going through his mind when he was diagnosed. I just really think it's going to be very powerful for a lot of you guys. So without further ado, let's play the intro. PJ, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm super excited about your story. I think that, I'm sure I brought it up a little bit in the intro, but I think you have a very interesting story about like what obesity kind of did to you. So I'm just really excited to dive into that.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here, man. Like Alex said, you've been a huge inspiration to so many people. It's nice to sit down and talk with you, and I'm excited to share my story with people.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear it. So I'm interested. What was your heaviest weight?
So recorded, I stepped on a scale and it was like 390, and that was like a year. I stepped on the scale, I saw that, and I was like, never going back to look at a scale again. And then just kind of took a year, and just kept eating and got bigger. But 390 was my biggest recorded. But I know I was well over 400 pounds, and I even got a nice little 400-pound marked out on my chest, tattooed on me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were at your heaviest of like whatever weight that was?
I was 24.
24. So for you, were you somebody that gained weight all throughout your life? Like, how did you get to that point?
So I was a bigger kid my whole life. And I think one thing that probably didn't help at all is like my parents were concerned about my weight as a young kid. And they even took me to a doctor in Denver. And we had all these tests ran, and the doctor came out and just said, he's just a big kid. He's going to be big his whole life. And I think my parents were kind of like, okay, that's reasonable. A doctor's telling me my son's fine, and it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And it just kept going from there. And even like when I was in I want to say like 5th grade, I went to play football, and I grew up in a small town, and I was too heavy to play football with the other kids my age. Mm-hmm. So, and that threw me back, because I was like, I think from a young age, it kind of just spiraled down from there. I was like, all right, well, I was never like picked on in school and stuff like that. I never had to deal with that. I was a very social kid, so I always had friends. But I think, getting turned away from stuff at such a young age really kind of drove me into those things.
It's interesting that you say that, because I completely, like, I've talked about that a little bit, but that actually happened to me. So when they call it Pop Warner here. I'm not sure if they
yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to play Pop Warner. I loved football. That's still probably my favorite sport, and I wanted to play really bad. We didn't really have much money, so for like when I was really young, I didn't play just because we couldn't afford it. But then once I got a little bit older, and my mom was like actually kind of thinking about it, and I think we had some family friends that were going to help put in so I could actually play. We found out that the weight limit was like 200 pounds, and I was already probably 30 pounds over that, maybe even 40. And like, it wasn't, I understand why they have weight limits, because you're actually tackling kids. And so if you weigh 100 pounds more than these other kids, like, that's very dangerous. And there was no level that I could go above. It was like, if you're over 200 pounds, there's nothing you can really do. You just have to basically wait until high school to play, tackle football. So I had the same exact experience growing up. Like, my weight was already starting to, take me away from things that maybe I would have really enjoyed.
Yeah, that happened a lot too. Like, I remember I was a pretty active kid too. Like, all my friends played sports, so that's what I did. Like, I did wrestling, and there was one other kid that was in my weight group in the whole state of Colorado. So I only wrestled with one kid like my entire time. But it's one of those things that, you don't think about it in the moment, but now that I look back, I was like, man, that probably took me back a couple steps, because, all my friends were out, playing football or doing certain things, and I was just kind of stuck in the house at some point. So,
yeah, it's crazy how much you really do miss out on, and not even in like this way of like people trying to make you miss out on things. It's just like your weight literally ends up stopping you from doing certain things. So you mentioned that you were kind of gaining weight. So what was it like in high school? Because you said you were 24 years old when you started losing, right? So, how was it in high school and then after that as far as the weight gain is concerned?
So high school was, I mean, I lived a pretty normal life in high school. Like I said, I was a very social person. So like I hosted like the pep assemblies at my school and stuff like that. So, I mean, I was liked by everyone. So my weight never really affected me. But also like I had a group of friends like, and we were all the big guys. Like we were, and it wasn't like we were big because we were playing sports. It was big because, we were eating Twinkies and hanging out after school, not doing anything. So it didn't really affect me there much. But once I got out of high school, I kind of noticed that, me and my friends got a house at like 18. We were all living together and we didn't do anything besides like eat and hang out. I mean, we'd work, but we'd come home, we'd eat. That's all we did. And the more like I look back at things, I realize like how much of addiction that I did have to food is crazy. And I mean, that kind of spirals out of control after there. I just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I think it was because like I never had anyone like really put the facts down in front of me. I never had like a health scare until I got sick. And then that's kind of when it all was like, oh man, what am I doing to my body?
Yeah. So take me through that scare.
So at 24, I was working a pretty sedentary job. I still work in the financial industry. So I was working at a bank and I was a personal banker. So most of my days were sitting. I mean, 8 hours a day, just sitting. And I started having pain in my lower back. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And for probably about 2 weeks, I mean, it was getting worse and worse. And then finally it was at the point where I could barely stand up. And I was like, all right, I got to get this looked at. So I go to the doctor. They said, hey, yeah, you have a cyst on your tailbone. Take some antibiotics. It'll be fine. So took the antibiotics for a week, went back, and they're like, hey, we're just going to remove it. So they went ahead and cut into my lower back. And as soon as they did this, I did this at an urgent care. So it wasn't even like a real hospital. They were like, yeah, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. So they cut into it. And as soon as he did that, the doctor's like, do you smell that? And I was like, yeah, it smells bad. He's like, no, that smells like fecal matter. I think this is so large it may have ruptured your colon. And I was like, oh, that's not good. I know that for a fact. So he's like, listen, I got to take you to the hospital. So I go to the hospital. They end up draining it. And then when they were done, I mean, it was one of the worst experiences of my life because when they removed the cyst, they gave me a shot in my back to numb it. And then after that, the doctor's like, well, we gave you one, we can't give you another. And before the next doctor got to work on it to take it out, it had been like an hour and a half. Oh. So I was basically almost completely like not numb anymore. So they brought in like a bar, attached it to the hospital bed, and I just held on to it and just screamed and cried. And they ended up draining it. And then they had to fill the hole with gauze. And it was 6 inches deep and 3 inches wide. I mean, and they literally... Yeah, they had to take scissors and pack the whole thing with gauze. And that was like the worst thing in my life. But I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm fine. And even then, like, when I look back and I read about it, that's something that happens to a lot of people that are obese. They get cysts on their tailbones because of the sweat and, it becomes an ingrown hair and stuff like that. So after that,
Was it, with the cyst, was it something that you could like see? Out like when you were, if you would look in the mirror, could you see it, or was it just this pain that you would feel?
Well, at that point I was like 400 pounds, so there wasn't much turnaround.
It's true.
But I could just feel like, and it was right, like basically right at my butt crack. So it was almost like inside. So there was just like a tiny whitehead on it, but it was all internal. That's how big it was. I mean, it wasn't like bulging out.
I mean, 6 inches deep. That's no joke at all.
Yeah. So they after they drained it, they're like, hey, you're going to go home for a couple of days, and then you're going to go see a doctor to see if you're going to need to have surgery, like if there's anything wrong with you internally. So I was laying around in the house, and then I just started feeling sick, like horribly sick. And I was like, I can just wait it out. I'll be fine. And then it got to the point where I was just puking constantly. And I couldn't like keep anything down. I would drink water, throw it up. I mean, everything for almost a week. So I finally got to the doctor. He's sitting there and I'm explaining what's going on. And he's like, well, I don't really know what's going on. So let's just have you go to the hospital, get some blood work. And they wheel me into the hospital. I get my blood drawn. I go to the x-ray room for them to do the x-rays, and I'm throwing up while they're doing the x-ray.
Oh my gosh.
And I sit there and I'm like, I need to be admitted. And they're like, there's nothing that we can. I mean, obviously you're sick, you're puking, but we don't have like a cause to admit you right now. So I leave the hospital, and I just knew something wasn't right. So my plan was to go home, and they'd given me like pain pills for my cyst because it was obviously in pain. So I was going to go home and take one of those and just kind of relax until the doctor called me. Before I could even get out of the parking lot of the hospital, the doctor calls me. He's like, "Hey, go back to the ICU right now. Turn around, go." So went back in. Before I was pulling in, and there was two nurses outside with a wheelchair, and I was like, "Okay, this isn't good," because you go to the hospital, it's a 45-minute wait no matter what.
Yeah.
I get out of my car, they like sit down, they wheel me in the back, and so basically what had happened is my blood sugar had spiked, and that's kind of what led me to be a diabetic. Um, so your average person's blood sugar is like 75 to like 150 being on the high side. After 500, you can die, you go into a coma, you have major failure in your kidneys. Mine was 795.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm sitting,
Wow.
yeah. Uh, I was sitting in the back room, and I I always try and stay positive, and I think like a lot of people, like when you're scared or nervous, you try and make jokes and stuff like that. And like the nurses came through, and I was so dehydrated that they were trying to put an IV in my veins, and they were having such a hard time finding one. So it took multiple. I mean, it took like an hour to get two IVs in me, and so I'm sitting there like making jokes or like having to try and find them in my hands, my feet, like everywhere. They couldn't find them, and I'm just like, "Oh, you can put it in my butt because that's where I do my steroids." Making jokes, like just trying to calm myself. And finally, like a doctor came over and like stood right in front of me. He's like, "Listen, I understand that like you're trying to be funny, but you don't understand that you're really close to dying." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop." And at that moment, I just kind of like it set in. I was like, "Wow."
Wow.
My mom flew out from Colorado because they thought at some point they were going to say goodbye to me. I was sitting in the emergency room, and they put me into the ICU, and I spent a couple weeks there, and then got out, and I was just like, I have to change. I can't live like this. I'm 24 years old, and having to have like my family come out and say goodbye to me, like I think it eternally a switch hit in my head, and I was like, it's just food. Like I'm killing myself over something that is a temporary thing. You get enjoyment from eating like a really good meal, but like it's so temporary that your life isn't. So you have to really make that switch. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I have to change. I'm not going to live my life giving myself shots every day and taking a handful of pills. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Wow. I I have like goosebumps listening to that because it's just crazy to me that everyone has their like click moment or the reason that maybe they start losing weight. Not many people have a story like that. A very pointed, like, this is what happened, this is the day, these are the events that led up to me wanting to lose weight. And I think that it's really, really powerful. I've brought up this theme a few times on the actually on this this series, is how important fear is when it comes to making a huge life change, because fear will that fear will always be there. So like losing weight takes a lot of time and a lot of work, and you have to make the right decision a bunch of times in a day, and then you have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. So that fear motivates people to actually make changes. That's why I think it's so important to actually talk about these real things that happen when you're morbidly obese, because if people are sitting out there thinking it's fine to be morbidly obese and nothing's going to happen, that's dangerous, and like your story is a perfect example of that. And so like that's why I'm so excited to have you on. I am curious. So once you found out that you were diabetic, what did you have to do from there as far as like shots? I remember we kind of had a conversation in the DMs where you're telling me how much insulin you were taking, and how has that changed now?
So initially when I got out, my blood sugar was still really high, so they had me on two different types of insulin. So I'd give myself 2 shots in the morning, a shot before lunch, and then 2 shots at night.
Wow.
So I gave myself 5
5
shots. Yeah. And they weren't small shots either. They were I was going through a bottle of insulin like every week or something like that. And if I had, luckily enough, I had a really good insurance through the company I was working for. But if you don't have insurance, man, that's like $300 a bottle. And to think that you were doing that every week, like it's crazy. But I
So
was
it would
on
have been like $1,200 a month just for insulin.
just for one insulin. So I was taking two, and I was taking metformin, which is another insulin pill. It's an actual pill that you take.
Wow.
And then I was on blood pressure medication because, of course, I had high blood pressure.
So you would have been like, if you were spending your own money, that would have been like 3,000 at least dollars a month just for the medication.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Easily.
Jeez.
I mean, and that's just insane. Like the more I look back on it, like, it's so expensive. But then, like, if you think about that, you're just taking medication. Then you got to pay for your test strips and like all that stuff. So you have to wake up, prick your finger. You're testing your blood all the time. And I remember just like I was sitting in my living room, and like I would sit there and I would just like shake every morning because I would give myself my shots through my stomach. So I just hold my stomach and give myself a shot. And I just remember sitting there and I was like, I'm 24 years old. Do I really want to live my life like this? Like I want to experience life. And I think I was just kind of sitting there, realizing I haven't really been living. You just kind of exist. I was just I was so big that I just was, sitting around not doing anything and not experience the things I want to do. Like we talked about, I was really active as a kid. I loved playing sports. I loved snowboarding and like going skateboarding and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to get back into that. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I just started getting up, started clean eating. And then, the one thing that you just talked about recently in your video, which, I'm so proud of Alex from his story, watching his progression and stuff. I've been following him on Instagram for a while, and he seems like he did the clean eating. He did it the right way. And for a while there, I fell into the same loop you did. I started losing weight, and then I realized, hey, I can take my calories down. I can keep taking it down. And that I will lose weight faster. And I started dropping weight really quick. And once I got to like a low weight of like 198 pounds, I was like, oh, this is great. But it's one of those things that it builds such bad habits. And still to this day, I have a hard time with breaking it. But sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. But as far as like insulin goes today, I don't take anything. I'm diabetic free. I haven't taken insulin in like 2 years, something like that. No insulin, no shots, no pills, no nothing, man. It's seriously a blessing. Like to look back and be like, man, especially like I should be dead. Like I 100% should be dead. There's no reason that I'm alive, but now I have to live my life and be grateful for it.
So with your doctors and the people that maybe saw you when you were at your heaviest over 400 pounds, have you like seen them since you've lost the weight and now that you're off the insulin? Because I'm sure that's a huge thing, right? Yeah.
And I a couple of my doctors were like, you need to talk to people. You need to get out there. You need to really share yourself and help other people. And that's a big thing that I look into. I see our youth today, and I just don't want to see anyone that's, my age or anyone go through what I had to. I don't want people to live their life by having to give themselves shots every day. And that's just, it's so sad to me that now that it's so in our world, it's so accustomed to obesity. It seems like everywhere is someone who's overweight. And I just look at young kids, especially, I'm like, man, you don't want to live that way. You really don't. I would say people don't understand the health ramifications behind it. And I was even thinking like the night when you told me we wanted to do this, I was thinking back to my journey, and I was thinking even if I didn't have any health benefits or health issues, say I went into the hospital at the weight I was, and they had such a hard time finding an IV for me. What if I got into a car accident and I had to have a blood transfusion and they couldn't find a vein? I would die then, and it wouldn't even be a health issue, but it would just because I was so overweight that they couldn't find a vein in me to save my life. Like, people don't think about those things.
Yeah, it is unbelievable how, like for me, how accustomed the world has gotten, especially America, to diabetes, because thankfully we have gotten to a point where we can really handle it and we have insulin and we really understand it and we can help people that have it. Like my brother's fiance, soon to be wife, actually, they're getting married on Saturday. She has type 1 diabetes, right? So she's actually very healthy. She's very active, but she she ended up having type 1, which is, they're similar, but they're also pretty different.
Yeah.
But the same, you kind of do the same thing, right? You have to take shots of insulin. But the thing is, not that long ago, diabetes was a death sentence. It was, you're diabetic, you die. That's it. There was no, now it's like, oh, you're diabetic. No, it's no big deal. Let's just take these pills, or you just take these shots and it'll be fine. It's like, yeah, now that we have it, that's true. But so many people are eating their way into this disease that, I mean, I've never had it, but that you had, and that was terrible. You're taking 5 shots a day, and people are just like, nah, it's not that big of a deal. It's whatever. I'll be fine. Like, that's unbelievable.
And that's the mindset that we have. And people who say that don't, and that's kind of the same thing I was. I was there, man. I probably didn't care if I got diabetes, but until you realize it and you have that and you have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, you realize this isn't what I want. And like we talked about fear, and fear is such a good motivator, but also we let fear hold us back sometimes. Mm-hmm. But if you can, conquer your fears and step forward, there's so much more you can accomplish. Like, I just knew I wasn't going to let diabetes hold me back. I knew, doing my research online, that I could beat it, and I stuck to it, and I did, because I wasn't going to live that way. I wasn't, like, I had to carry around a little suitcase with me to work with my needles and my insulin. I had to wear a medical bracelet in case something happened to me. Like, I'm 24 years old. Like, do I really, like, if I went out to like the bars or something with my friends, like, oh, nice, you got a sick watch on. Oh man, it's my life alert. I'm 24 and I, watch out, I can't have too much sugar.
Yeah, man. It really can become a prison. Like, it really can, your weight. And I mean, I don't mean that in like a bad way, but it can stop you from doing certain things. And I mean, you kind of mentioned it as well, but I love saying, like, when I was at my heaviest, I was not living, I was just existing. There were so many things that I wanted to do that I was held back because of my weight. And, I really did believe that eventually it was going to kill me. And I felt like it was going to happen pretty soon. And who knows how right I was. Like, I don't know how close I was to any serious issues, but I got that scare and it motivated me to want to make a change. And like for you, you had a very poignant thing that happened to you. What's crazy to me is that, for some people, like for you, you were around 400, maybe a little bit over 400 pounds when it happened. But some people can get up to 600 or 700 pounds before they actually even become diabetic or have those issues. So it really is crazy, like how the scale, like how different it can be for everybody.
Well, that's what people don't think too, is that, I know that you guys talked a lot about, the whole fat acceptance movement and stuff like that, and loving yourself at any size. And I completely agree with that. Be the person you want to be, I have fully respect for everyone, but also like I was 400 pounds and I was healthy. Like, I wasn't having any issues. And it was just an ingrown hair that turned into a cyst that shot maybe a diabetic that almost killed me. Just because you're healthy in that moment, one little thing could push you over the edge to a major sickness. And that's the thing that people don't understand. Like, it, like that, you could be sick and it could be done. Mm-hmm. I mean,
absolutely, man. Like I've been thinking about this, but with the health at every size movement, it's like, yeah, you're healthy now until you're not. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's like, it can happen, bam, so fast. And especially if you're overweight and you develop diabetes or anything like that. And I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people are trying to say, well, is it really being overweight that's causing the diabetes, or is it the stigma of that? I'm like, come on. Like, let's be real here. Like, it's so dangerous to just be like, well, I'm healthy now. It's like, yeah, you might be healthy right now, but what about when you're 35 or 40? Are you going to be healthy at that size? Probably not. So why not try and make some decisions? And even if you don't want to make decisions, you shouldn't shame other people for being like you, for having type 2 diabetes and then doing something about it. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you fat phobic or a terrible person because you did that, It's crazy how much the fat acceptance and the health at every size movement has been radicalized in, I would say, like the last year. I had never even heard about it until about a year ago, and then all of a sudden I was getting called fat phobic and stuff like that. And I was like, what is going on right now? Like, I 100% don't consider myself that. And then I started getting into it, and then I kind of got dragged into all of it.
Well, yeah, I just don't think people take the time to realize that it's not that you're fat phobic or whatever. You're just wanting the best for your life. And I correlate a lot of my life changes to where I'm at now. I mean, I know like, and I don't want this to sound negative, but I know like when I was a bigger person, I was lazier at my job. I mean, you just don't have enough energy. And since I lost the weight, like my career path and stuff like that has gotten so much better. Like I'm more focused at work. I'm just, it's really built me. And it probably has a lot to do with being in the gym and having determination and staying motivated. That just shaped me into the person I was today. And I look back and how close I was to death. I really feel like when I was in the hospital, that person that I was really did die. And I kind of started over, and I was able to build the person I am today, and it's just changed my life. And it's crazy to think that death is something that can change your life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's that fear that'll motivate you. Now, I am curious. So when you did first start, losing weight, a lot of people when they're first starting, they feel like there's just so much information out there. Like, what did you kind of do at the start to just start losing weight?
So obviously, like when you become a diabetic, like when I was in the hospital, they sent me with a nutritionist and they kind of gave me like the rundown. It just really wasn't like, it was pretty basic information. And I kind of just took it the simple route. I cut out all sugar. I mean, I gave anything that had sugar in it, I was deleting, because I was like, if I can get my sugar levels down and start losing weight, that's going to be huge. And when I was coming off sugar, man, I felt horrible. Like it's so bad. But honestly, a lot of the stuff I did was I watched a lot of your videos. I watched Danny's videos, and those really helped motivate me, especially like when you and Brian were doing your Men's Physique show. I was watching that and I was like, man, if he can do it, I can do it. It's not like, and I talk to people a lot. They're like, man, I can't believe you did that. Like, I don't think I could ever do that. It's all in a mindset. And I just changed the way I was thinking about things, and I kept it simple. I didn't do any fad diet or anything like that. I was like, hey, veggies, protein, eliminate. I mean, I didn't do a ton of carbs, but I still had some carbs, but I just kept it simple and just kept I tracked everything. MyFitnessPal was my best friend. I tracked everything I ate and cutting out liquid calories too. Soda is a huge one. I remember when I was first at the bank, I actually worked inside of a grocery store as a teller when I started. And being inside of a grocery store all day, I mean, you have unlimited access to anything. And I was drinking 2 of the big, tall Red Bulls like a day, not sugar-free, like just standing like the huge ones. And I would pound those all day, then go home, have soda, and not really think about it. But now that I look back, I'm like, man, I was drinking probably 1,000 or plus calories a day in just liquid. And you don't even think about it because you don't think of as like a liquid as something that's going to put fat on your body. But it was just, how you say you did the simple diet. I just kind of kept it simple. And there's no real magic diet out there that anyone's going to be able to follow. I think you just have to find something that works for you and something that's sustainable. Because
absolutely.
All these diet fads come and go, and people get hooked on for a while. And I don't think a diet should have an expiration time on it. I don't think you should look for the end of it, like, oh, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks and be done, and then I'll be good. I'll start there, But a lot of people, get off a diet and they fail. So now I do a little bit of everything. Like I do a lot of like vegan stuff, and then sometimes it's like some weeks when I'm meal prepping, I'll just go like vegetarian, or you just got to keep it simple, know your whole foods, and stick with that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, I know you kind of brought up how you do still have food struggles, and I think that that's honestly very normal, especially because it's not like you've had the weight off for a lot of years, for me, it's been like 6 years, you know what I mean? And not until a few years ago was I like, I feel like I'm doing a lot better with my food. So I do want to say, like, I wouldn't stress too much about that. Obviously, do the work to try and mitigate those things, but like, don't feel like you're in a bad spot right now and nobody else would ever be there. Like, I think where you are right now is exactly where I probably was at that moment in my journey. So I want to be too stressed about it. Just like you're in a good spot, and hearing what you're saying, it's like, you're learning, you're doing the research, you are getting the knowledge in. And I think that's the most important thing. You're not just attributing all of your success to some diet or to something you don't truly understand. It seems like you are understanding everything that you're doing. So I just want to say, it seems like you're doing really, really well. And like, I see a lot of myself in you. It's funny. It's kind of just funny seeing, like, talking to you, because I agree like almost 100% with everything you've said. And it's just, it is really, really cool. I do want to ask, before we go, this is kind of what I've been asking to everybody. If you were to talk to someone that is on their day one, they are where you were when you first started, what would you say to that person?
I think if and I have a couple friends that are at that position and they've asked me that, and I tell everyone, don't overthink it. I think mentally a lot of people overthink it. Like, oh, I gotta get some gym equipment. I gotta find the right gym. I gotta do this, that. Just don't overthink it. Just start. Don't tell yourself, hey, it's Friday. I'm gonna start on Monday. Go today. Why? What's holding you back? You're not doing anything. It's all about starting and then going from there. Take the small steps. Just keep yourself in a place where you're happy and you're going. And it's crazy when you start getting into the gym and you see progression, how that fire is going to light and you're going to be addicted to it. And that's what happened for me. Is majority of my weight I didn't lose in the gym. It was all diet, and I tell people that a lot too. Don't focus necessarily on going to the gym when you first start. I mean, you want to be in the gym, but if you seriously just cut out all the junk food and start counting your calories and stuff like that and be in a deficit, you're going to see progression. And then from that, you're going to have more motivation. You're like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm clean eating. Let's go to the gym. Let's do that. And just don't overthink everything. Keep it simple and you'll be fine. That's all I did is I kept it as simple as possible.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. I do want to say thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciate it. I really think this is going to help a lot of people out. So again, thank you so much for being on, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Once again, huge thanks to PJ for coming on and sharing his story. I will make sure I'll link all his stuff down in the description down below. Again, I really hope you guys check him out. I hope that this episode was enjoyable and you got some knowledge out of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, look how buff I am.
Obey the warning signs, and when there are flashing lights or wigwags, don't attempt to cross until they come to a complete stop.